And we're starting a series called Waymaker Miracle Worker. See, in the Christian church growing up, a lot of times, even when I grew up, I would hear the word miracle, and I automatically would think of magic. And when we hear magic, we think of magic tricks, we think of Disney magic, we think of just like magical pixie dust that turns our legs into mermaids. I have a 4-year-old, so that's like our magical wish every day. But I want to tell you guys today that as we go through this new series, Waymaker Miracle Worker, we're going to be looking at the miracles of Jesus, but we have to define what is a miracle, because a miracle and so-called magic or magic tricks are very different. Magic tricks just are these things that awe and inspire wonder, and they do it because they have this trick behind it, and they do it with an audience, and it's like, okay, so is the miracles Jesus doing, is it like magic, or is it something different? As we jump into this series, we're going to look at 4 different types of miracles, but we have to define what does that word even mean? Well, a miracle is a divine work of God that transcends human understanding. It inspires wonder and it displays the greatness of God. It's an interruption in the natural laws. So like gravity is a natural law, something that we know that it's like if I drop my phone, it's going to fall to the ground. But when it gets interrupted, if I drop my phone, it just stayed floating here. That has interrupted the natural laws of nature. And when God performs miracles, when Jesus performed miracles, he does something supernatural that defies the laws of nature, of things that we know that normally happen. But the point of it isn't just so we can clap and just so we can be like, wow, that's really cool. A miracle, I think the best definition for it is a sign. And all throughout the book of John, which we're going to be reading today, he actually doesn't use the word miracle. He uses the word signs. Because when Jesus performs a miracle, does something miraculous, he doesn't just do it so we clap. He does it because it's a sign. It's pointing to the fact that he is the Messiah. He's the one that the Israelite people in the Old Testament have been waiting for. A miracle is evidence, proof that he is who he says he is. It's to back up his claims, his teaching, that he is the Messiah, the one that they've been waiting for, the one that's been prophesied. And so he does 4 different types of miracles throughout his ministry. He does miracles of nature, miracles of life, miracles of healing. And today we're going to talk about miracles of supply. And you hear supply and you're probably like, that sounds super lame compared to nature and life and healing. But supply, those types of miracles are when Jesus can feed 5,000 people with just a few loaves of bread and fish and have 12 baskets of food left over. He supplied this insane amount of food starting with next to nothing. It's a miracle, something that shouldn't happen but did happen. And it points to that he is who he says he is. Or the miracle of when he calls Peter to be a disciple and he tells him to throw his net out and they catch this ginormous amount of fish that starts sinking the boat. It was a miracle because that was unheard of. That was something that shouldn't happen. And the point of it is to be a sign to point that he is the Messiah. And today we're going to talk about a miracle that is his first miracle, the first miracle Jesus ever performed. I mean, this is him starting his ministry. He's been baptized. He has his disciples. And now he's about to perform the first sign to say, I am who I say I am. And he does this miracle in John chapter 2. A miracle that you're like, okay, his first miracle is probably something epic where he breaks the ground in half and then brings it back together with just a snap of his fingers. Or he finds someone whose limbs have been severed and just blinks and they're all back together. Something so epic. But his first miracle is just at a wedding and it's just changing water into wine. And we're going to read this miracle and look at how it seems like, wow, this for your first thing to do, just to change some water into wine to keep a party going, that's your first one. Why is it that? And we're going to jump into looking at this miracle and find out there is so much meaning behind why this is his first miracle. There's so much there pointing as a sign to who he is and the quality and character of who God is. So let's read it. John chapter 2, starting at verse 1. On the 3rd day, a wedding took place in Cana of Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding as well. When the wine ran out, Jesus' mother told him, they don't have any wine. What does this have to do with you and me, woman? Jesus asked. My hour has not yet come. Do whatever he tells you, his mother told the servants. Now, six stone water jars had been set there for Jewish purification. Each contained 20 or 30 gallons. Fill the jars with water, Jesus told them. So they filled them to the brim. Then he said to them, now draw some out and take it to the head waiter or the master of the banquet. And they did this. When the master of the banquet tasted the water after it had become wine, he did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. He called the groom and told him, everyone sets out the fine wine first. Then after people are intoxicated, the inferior wine comes out. But you have kept the fine wine until now. Jesus did this, the first of his signs in Cana of Galilee. He revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. So I read this, and I'm like, okay, your first miracle, why is it at a wedding, and why does it involve wine? Because it seems like this is just a party. But when we read this and dive into the Jewish culture, we realize this is way more than just a party. You see, in the New Testament, Paul describes a wedding is a symbol. A wedding, a marriage, is a symbol of Jesus' marriage to the church. See, my marriage to my husband, David, is supposed to represent God's marriage to us as the bride of Christ, the church, his relationship with us, being married to us, sacrificing for us, loving us. And so marriage is this deep symbol that, especially in the Jewish culture, it was a big deal. See, my wedding, I got married on the grass lawn out there 6.5 years ago, and I wore this beautiful white dress that cost way too much money, and I haven't worn it since. And then I went inside the edge and partied it up, guys. And at 8 o'clock after the dinner ended, we had about 80 students from 11-12, because my husband was working in 11-12 at the time. 80 students came and mobbed the dance floor. It was epic. My husband was crowd surfing. Everyone's looking at me like, oh my gosh, you can dance so good. But they're like, we're only saying that because it's your wedding, because you suck at dancing, but just believe it. It was like the best thing ever. And after 5 hours of that, it was done. Just 5 hours. And I planned for months and spent a lot of money, but it was the best 5 hours of my life, guys. In Jewish culture, their weddings weren't 5 hours. They were like 7 days, guys. 7 days of just celebrating and feasting and eating, because they were celebrating a wedding, a union that was representing Christ and the church. That was important. And so Jesus chooses, hey, my first miracle is at a wedding, because a wedding is important. Marriage is important. And with wine, changing water into wine, in the Old Testament, a lot of the prophecies talked about when Messiah comes, when the one that we're waiting for comes, we're going to feast in the bounty of food and the new wine. There was all these pointers in Amos and Jeremiah that pointed to that when Messiah comes, we're going to feast, we're going to celebrate, we're going to have joy, we're going to have this new wine. And so this wasn't just like, oh, you know what? I'm at a wedding. Let's keep the party going. There was meaning behind all of this. But I think one of the most important things for us to understand is that it has deep meaning, this wedding, this changing water into wine. But one of the most theological and I think deep parts about this chapter you can see at verse 4 is when Jesus says, my hour has not yet come. He's talking about my hour. What does that hour mean? Your hour to like change water into wine, your hour to take a nap, your hour to do something cool. He's talking about when he says hour, if you look all through the New Testament, hour is talking about his hour on the cross. His hour on the cross to die for the sins of the world and rise again has not yet come. But for us, when we read this story, we look back through it in the lens to look at like, hey, this is way more than just a party, way more than just a wedding. How does this actually apply to me in my life? We have to understand that the hour has come. The hour of the cross has come, and therefore we get to live new. The hour has come. Jesus died on the cross 2,000 years ago, and he rose again. And because of that, this wedding that we're reading about isn't just a symbolic thing that's pointing to what Jesus is going to do. For us, it's pointing back to what he's already done. He has made us new, like he has changed that water into wine, into something new, into something great, into something sweet. He has changed us, old, dead in our sin, into something new, his children. We are his children. We have been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. The old is gone, the new has come. We have been made new. That's actually the tattoo I have on my arm. It says made new, because I want to remind myself every day that the old sin of me has been made new. And now that I have been made new because of the hour of the cross, I am going to now live new. But what does that mean to live new? In Ephesians, it says, you were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, like put it off, because it's corrupted by deceitful desires. You've been told to be made new in the attitude of your minds, to put on a new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. So when we read this passage and we learn about, hey, this miracle was a sign pointing to what Jesus was going to do on the cross, for us, is pointing back to what Jesus has already done. We know that because of what Jesus has done, we are now to live new. What does that mean to live new? How do we do that? And what's cool is this story actually tells us how to live new in 4 ways that we're going to talk about today. And the first way that Jesus shows us in this miracle on how to live new is to live in relationship, not religion. Live in relationship, not religion. In chapter 2, verse 6, it says there were 6 stone water jars that had been set there for Jewish purification. So there were stone water jars that they would use for purifying, for cleanliness. So if you sinned, you would use the water to wash yourself before you can go to the temple. If you touch blood, if you were going to go worship, there were these like baths called mikvahs that you basically would bathe in before you would come to church. And we don't like have a mikvah set out there that all of you have to dip yourself in before you come in here, but I would appreciate if you bathe before you come to church because, we don't need this place stinking up. But in that time, there was these Jewish purification laws that you had to clean yourself all this time. There were all these laws, the 10 commandments. There was the 600 and something commandments in Leviticus of things they had to do to be made right, to be made pure so that they could come before God. And Jesus symbolically is showing in this miracle when he changes this water jars, what's representing that law and those things you have to do, this religion, he changes it into wine, into something sweet. He's saying, hey, I'm doing away with this old religious system, and the way that I'm making you new is that we're now in relationship. See, as Christians, we have relationship with God. We're not just a part of like, oh, this is a religion, something we do. No, we have a relationship with God. In 1 John 3:1, we can throw it on the screen. It says that we are children of God because of the great love that the Father has lavished on us. We're children of God, which means we have a relationship with the Father. So what does that mean to like have a relationship and not be in just religion? See, a religion says like, I obey God, therefore, because I obey, I'm accepted. Where a relationship says, I'm already accepted, therefore I obey. Religion says, I obey God to get things from God, where a relationship says, I obey God to get God and just to delight in him, to resemble him. A religion says that when circumstances in my life go wrong, I am angry at God, angry at myself, because I believe that I'm a good person and I deserve to be comfortable. But a relationship with God says that, hey, when circumstances in my life go wrong, I struggle, but I know that while God may allow this trial for my training, he's going to have his love during this trial for me. He's going to be there with me because we're in relationship. A lot of us believe that we have a relationship with God, but we're just walking through a religion of steps of things that we do. We just come to church. We're on the Salt and Light team, but we've never actually like talked to God. I'm watching the new show. It's not a new show. It's on, it's an old show. The Marvel shows. Have any of you guys watched the Marvel shows? Not just the Marvel movies. Disney Plus has like a bazillion of them. But I started watching, I'm on season 1 of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. There's 7 seasons, 22 episodes in it, guys. I will not see you till next winter because there's so much to watch. But anyways, I'm not going to like spoil it for you a ton. But basically, there's a part in season 1 where there's this girl who's going out and finding people who have power. She finds this guy who can make fire come from his hand, and this other person who's like super strong, and then she like recruits them to come be a part of like this centipede ring thing that's like intense. Anyways, she's doing all of this because she works for this guy who's the clairvoyant, and the clairvoyant can like see the future. Here's the thing. She's never, oh gosh, dude, don't spoil it for me. Okay, that makes me really sad. Okay, cool. Anyways, guys, so she works for the clairvoyant, but here's the thing. She's never met him, never talked to him. She just does stuff for him. And like, I was watching this, I was like, you were literally like capturing people, killing people, like ruining their lives, doing all these things, and you've never even met the person you work for, you've never talked to them. Guys, she's like stuck in this religion of what she does for the clairvoyant. She doesn't even have a relationship with him. And some of us, as Christians, we've never actually talked to God. I think there's a lot of things I could talk about of like, here's how you have a relationship with God, but like, just look at your prayer life. Do you pray to God? Do you talk to him? Do you let him talk to you? Are your prayers all just, God, I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this? Or is it, God, what do you want from me? What do you have to say to me? If I told you guys that I was married to my husband, David, but him and I have never spoke a word to each other, be like, no, you have a marriage contract, but you're not in a marriage. Is your relationship with God a relationship with God, or is it a religion? Because of what Jesus did on the cross, he said, you don't have to live in religion anymore. Live in relationship. It's so much sweeter and so much beautiful, so much more beautiful. The second way that we live new is we live with compassion, not just passion. We live with compassion, not just passion. If you look at this story of this wedding, like, why does Jesus really like change the water into wine? Here's the thing. This new couple that just got married, they live in an honor-shame culture. If they were to run out of wine, it's not like, oops, bummer, let's just run over to the store and get some more. No, it is shame on that family. Shame and debt. They could actually be sued according to the Jewish law in that time. So this family would have shame. They would have debt. They would be starting out their marriage financially at a bad place, socially at a bad place. It would just cause ruin to this family. And so Jesus, we see him show compassion for this couple, for this family, by changing the water into wine, because he knows that means that he's saving them from shame, from debt, from all of these things. The wine wasn't like a life-saving thing, a necessity. Like, people could have drank water and they would have survived, guys. But it was important enough to him about their shame, their debt, their lives, the start of their marriage, to have compassion on them. We don't even know this couple's name, but we know that God cares about the nameless. We don't know how big of a couple this was in a community or how little, but we know that if they were little, he cared about them. God calls us to have compassion for other people. And the reason I wrote compassion, not just passion, is because a lot of us are passionate people. We're passionate about the whales, about the turtles. We're passionate about all the people we raise money for starving to serve. We're passionate about the starving kids in Africa. These things that we post about on social media that we raise money for. But sometimes we don't have compassion for the everyday things. Like the person who's sitting alone at school. The person who's rejected by others. We don't have compassion for our parents when they're struggling to figure out, what do I do with the fact that I have a teenager? We don't have compassion for our siblings when they're annoying us. We don't have compassion for the people in our small group when they don't respond back to a text message, because we have no idea that what's going on at home is like destroying them, so they don't even have mental capacity to respond to you, but we're just mad. You guys, we can be passionate people for the things of God, but we need to have more than just passion for those big things. We need to have compassion in the everyday things, the little things. And we see Jesus does that for this couple. What would it look like for you to have compassion for the people that you're around all the time? Your parents, your siblings, that kid at school, the homeless person on the street. Compassion is an action. It's not just posting about it on social media. It's taking a step to love someone, to show them compassion no matter what they're going through, to say, hey, how are you? To give someone a smile, not to just avoid them when you're walking. How could we have compassion every day? Because you've been made new, now we get to live new. In Colossians 3:12, we can put it up on the screen, it says, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourself with compassion. Clothe yourself. As you get dressed in the morning, you have to put clothes on before you go outside. Otherwise, it's going to be super weird. So you have to put your clothes on. You need to, every day, when you put your clothes on, clothe yourself with compassion, with kindness, humility, gentleness, patience. Guys, this world desperately needs people who aren't just passionate about things, because everyone's passionate. We see it all over social media. We need people who have compassion for the people right next to them that they're rubbing shoulders with every day. That's what's going to change the world. Not just passionate people posting on social media, people who have compassion and take into action, loving the people around them. And that's what Jesus did. And because of what he did on the cross, we've been made new, and that means we live with compassion. And the next way we live new is we live out faith, not fear. We live out faith, not fear. We see this in this story from two characters, Mary and the servants. Guys, Mary approached Jesus, and she went up to him and was like, hey, the wine's run out. She didn't ask him anything. She just told him what was going on. Joseph, at this point, Mary's husband, is dead. The last time we see him in the Bible is when Jesus was at the temple, like 12 years old. So at some point in time, Joseph died. In Jewish culture, Jesus, as the eldest son, was now responsible for taking care of his mom, providing for the family, and making decisions that normally the father of the household would do. So this practice of Mary coming to Jesus, being like, hey, here's a situation, what's going on? It shows that she trusts him, that she goes to him. She knows that he provides. She knows that he's good. Here's the thing. Mary has no idea what he's going to do when she goes over and says, hey, the wine's run out. She doesn't go over with like a plan and a schedule of how to fix this thing. She just tells him the problem. And when she comes to him, she says, hey, to the servants, just do whatever he tells you, because she trusts him, but she has no idea what he's going to do. The servants are told to fill up with water, and they're like, we don't need water, we need wine. It doesn't make sense what he's asking them to do. But guess what? They obey him and they do what he says, even though it doesn't make sense. Because we've been made new, we are to live with faith, not fear. Fear of like, this doesn't make sense. Fear of, I don't know what God's gonna do. But faith, trusting God enough to do what he says. Do you have faith to trust God with your sexuality? Do you have faith to trust God with your language? Do you have faith to trust God with your relationships? Do you have faith to trust God enough to do what he says, to respect your parents, even though you feel like they don't freaking deserve it? But you trust God enough to do what he says, not what you think. We live in fear so many times because we don't know what's going to happen or it doesn't make sense. But because we've been made new, as new creations, we are to live with faith, trusting him in the way that we forgive the person that's hurt us, and how we give our money in offering, how we don't cheat on a test. We trust him enough to do what he says. In Proverbs 3, it says, you can put it on the screen, trust the Lord with all of your heart. Don't lean on your own understanding. When we lean on our own understanding, it's limited. God's understanding is completely unlimited. He is good. He is great. He created everything. Trust him, the creator of the universe, the one who loves you, who died on the cross, more than trusting in yourself. And the last way that we live new is we live transformed, not just saved. We live transformed, not just saved. Guys, Jesus turned water into wine, and guess what? He made 900 bottles of wine, guys. 900 bottles. Now, let me just tell you right now, the way they made wine was different back then. So he wasn't like, here, I'm trying to get everyone drunk. That was not the point of it at all. Yeah, you smash grapes with your feet and you ferment it, all that stuff. But the alcohol level was way lower. The point of it wasn't like, hey, I'm trying to give it all this wine and get people drunk. Not at all. That's not what our God is about. And we know that clearly throughout all of Scripture. So anyone who uses that argument needs to read the Bible. The point of it is that Jesus was trying to say, hey, when I bless people, when I show up, I do it in abundance. I do it in excess. See, it was deliberate. Because this couple now has income for their family. They now have been blessed beyond belief. Jesus, when he gives us salvation on the cross, doesn't just save us, but he wants to transform our lives. He wants to give us grace upon grace, forgiveness upon forgiveness. He wants to change us from the inside out. And a lot of us, we think we've been made new, but all we've done is taken that ticket of salvation instead of realizing, like, you're not just saved. You're going to be transformed by God and what he has done. Are you allowing God to transform your life, or are you just taking that ticket to heaven? John 10:10 says that God has come to give us life and give us life to the full. He wants to transform your life, to give you joy, that in the middle of trials, that it's sweet because he's with you. Guys, the way they make wine is literally crushing the grapes, like our friend pointed out. Like, that's not like a beautiful thing to be crushed. And there's moments in life where we're going to be crushed. And we can be transformed in those moments by God because we know that he saved us, but he's also transforming us because he's with us, because he's made us new. And we can have joy in the midst of hardship. That's the greatest, evangelism tool ever, is to have that joy and share that with others in the middle of a trial. Guys, we've been made new. We get to live new by living in relationship with compassion, living in a way that's so different than what our culture is doing right now. But yet constantly we go back to our old selves. It's like, imagine if there's this couple that they get pregnant and they look at their first ultrasound and it's like, oh, this is the cutest little baby ever. And they're staring at it. And then 9 months later, the baby is born and They keep staring at the ultrasound because the ultrasound's just so cute. And now their baby's like 2 years old and walking, and they're just staring at the ultrasound because it's so cute. Guys, why would you stare at the ultrasound? The real baby's here. That's way cuter. Yeah, they pee and poop and vomit a little bit, but they're way cuter to snuggle than an ultrasound picture. Guys, that's what we do sometimes. We go back to the old things when it's like, guys, we've been literally made new. Stop looking at the ultrasound. Look at the real deal. Jesus is here. He's transformed you because of the hour on the cross. Now start living new, because that's where you experience freedom and joy and transformation. So my question for you as we close today is, what has been made new in your life that you're not living new? What has been made new in your life that you're not living new? Are you living in relationship, or are you living in religion? Are you living with compassion? Have you allowed God to make that new in your life? Are you living with faith, actually trusting him enough to do what he says? Or are you not doing what he says at all? And are you allowing him to transform you through the power of the word and the Holy Spirit? Because on the hour of the cross, he has made you new, and he wanted that to be made known in his first miracle. That's more than just a party. It's more than just a wedding. It's about this transformation. Let's pray. God, you have made us new, and you desire us to live new, not just because that's something you want, but because you know it's what's best for us. You want us to experience freedom and hope and life in the midst of struggles and pain. So I just pray, God, that as we think about a wedding, we think about wine, we think about you making us new and what you did on that cross, God. We love you so much. In your name we pray. Amen.